The first encounter. The Galactic Empire had never been questioned. For centuries, it had dominated the galaxy with an iron grip. Its fleet was the most powerful force in the universe, and its commanders feared no one. Conquerors of entire worlds, they had faced civilizations that were far more advanced, and still they had emerged victorious every time. The thought of an alien species resisting their might was laughable, especially when that species was humanity. It all began when the Empire's High Council, led by Grand Admiral Tarth, decided it was time to bring Earth into the fold. The Empire's expansion was relentless, and there was no stopping it. Earth, a small isolated planet in a distant star system, had long been ignored. But now it was ready to be annexed. The Empire had its eyes set on Earth, thinking it would be a simple addition to their vast domain. The fleet that would carry out the invasion was massive, an unstoppable force of ships bristling with weapons. The Empire's fleets had crushed much stronger civilizations in the past, so their arrogance was justified. They didn't anticipate the humans putting up a fight. After all, the humans were still in the early stages of space travel. Their technology was primitive compared to the Empire's, and their military might was practically non-existent. As the Empire's fleet approached Earth, the humans could do little more than watch in awe. Their first encounter with the alien invaders was a terrifying moment. Across the world, millions stared up at the sky, witnessing the arrival of these colossal ships in Earth's orbit. The media broadcasted the event, and the fear among the people was palpable. Governments scrambled to formulate a response, but it seemed pointless. What could they do against such overwhelming power? On Earth, a small fleet of human ships, hastily assembled and equipped with outdated technology, was the only line of defense. These ships were nothing compared to the Empire's armada, and their commanders were not military experts by any means. They were just civilians, engineers, and astronauts who had come together to protect their home. Their mission was simple: survive. But no one really expected them to succeed. The humans knew they were outgunned, outclassed, and outnumbered. Yet there was something in their hearts that refused to bow down to fear. The first wave of attacks came swiftly. The Empire's warships unleashed an unrelenting barrage of energy weapons, missiles, and laser fire, hoping to cripple Earth's defenses in one swift blow. The humans watched in horror as the explosions rocked the skies, their ships barely able to dodge the incoming fire. Yet, against all odds, some of the human ships managed to avoid destruction. They were faster, more agile, and had a unique advantage. Humans weren't afraid to take risks. But the real surprise came from something no one had anticipated. As the first wave of the battle unfolded, the humans did something no one expected. They laughed. They laughed at the sheer absurdity of the situation. Here they were, facing the might of the Galactic Empire, and they were laughing. The commanders, who had never seen a battle like this, felt a mix of disbelief and amusement. They had been trained to fight, to command, to lead. But this was something else. As the humans continued to dodge and weave through the Empire's onslaught, their fleet began to fire back. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They used their ingenuity, the very thing that made humans so unpredictable. With every shot they'd fired, they threw the Empire's fleet into chaos. The humans weren't doing much damage, but the Empire's commanders couldn't understand why these humans weren't terrified. They were supposed to be cowering in fear, begging for mercy, but instead, the humans were fighting with laughter in their hearts. Back on Earth, the people watched in awe as the humans in space fought back against the Empire. The fear that had gripped the world began to shift. Slowly, the laughter of the humans in space began to inspire the people on the ground. The very thing the Empire had relied on. Fear was now the thing that made the humans dangerous. Instead of submitting to the overwhelming power of the Empire, they had chosen to resist in the most unexpected way, by laughing in the face of their oppressors. The aliens had underestimated humanity. They had assumed that the humans would buckle under pressure, but they had failed to understand the strength of the human spirit. The Empire's fleet was not prepared for this. They had prepared for a world that would kneel before them, a world that would panic and beg for mercy. What they got instead was an enemy that fought with humor, ingenuity, and a stubborn will to survive. As the battle raged on, it was clear that Earth's small fleet was no match for the Empire's overwhelming strength. Yet, the humans refused to give up. Every dodge, every shot, every maneuver was a defiance of the odds. The Empire's fleet began to question its own assumptions. Was this what they had expected? Were these humans really as weak as they thought? Or was there something more to them that they had missed? The humans, in their hearts, knew they were facing impossible odds. But they also knew that they had something the Empire didn't: hope. And that was something no fleet, no weapon, and no empire could ever truly defeat. As the battle continued, the Empire realized it had made a grave mistake in underestimating Earth. The humans were not just fighting for their survival. They were fighting for something much more powerful, something the Empire could not yet comprehend. And so the first encounter between the Galactic Empire and humanity began, with laughter, hope, and the realization that humans were far more resilient than anyone could have imagined. As the battle raged on above Earth, the Galactic Empire's commanders grew more and more perplexed by what they were witnessing. The humans had been thrown into chaos by their first wave of attacks, and yet they were fighting back with a tenacity that defied logic. What was more unsettling was the laughter that seemed to ring out from every corner of Earth's small fleet, echoing through the communications channels. The first wave of missiles had struck the human ships, damaging some of them, but not as much as the Empire had anticipated. These were supposed to be easy targets, mere stepping stones on the way to Earth's eventual conquest. The Empire had calculated every possible scenario, but this wasn't one of them. The humans weren't panicking. Instead, they were laughing, as if this whole thing were some kind of cosmic joke. Grand Admiral Tarth, the leader of the Empire's invasion force, was furious. He had watched as Earth's meager fleet dodged and weaved with astonishing skill, managing to stay alive despite the overwhelming firepower of his ships. His pride was on the line, and the audacity of these humans was infuriating. They weren't supposed to be this brave, or this foolish. Yet, as the humans continued to maneuver their ships with a level of precision that defied their technology, Tarth couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Back on Earth, the people who had been watching in terror now began to feel something else. The images of human ships evading destruction and retaliating with their pitiful weaponry had sparked a new feeling: defiance. The humans in space weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting with an unshakable confidence. They were laughing in the face of the Empire's superior power, and the people of Earth could feel that same spirit taking root inside them. Across the globe, citizens of all nations watched the battle unfold. The laughter of the humans in space became a symbol of resistance, and it spread like wildfire. From the streets of New York to the bustling markets of Beijing, from the crowded squares of Paris to the open fields of Africa, the laughter of the humans became contagious. The world had been gripped by fear, but now they were beginning to fight back in their own way. In the midst of the chaos, Commander William Parker, one of the leaders of the human defense fleet, stood at the helm of the Defiant, his flagship. Parker was an unlikely hero, a former commercial pilot who had never been trained for war. But there was something about the way he looked at the Empire's fleet, something in his eyes, that told everyone he wasn't going to back down. The man was made of pure grit, and it wasn't long before the rest of the fleet began to follow his lead. As Parker barked orders over the intercom, the human ships continued to weave in and out of the Empire's fire. Their agility was unmatched, and their unpredictability kept the invaders guessing. But it wasn't just their ships that surprised the Empire. It was the way the humans fought. They weren't fighting the same battle that the Empire had fought with countless other civilizations. The humans weren't playing by the same rules. They didn't have the luxury of overwhelming firepower, so they made up for it with ingenuity and, more importantly, their sense of humor. Admiral Tarth watched in disbelief as the human ships danced through his fleet's defenses, taking advantage of every opening, every mistake. His strategy, so meticulously planned, was falling apart. He had underestimated the humans, but now, the question was, how far would this unexpected resistance go? In the thick of the battle, Parker's voice came over the fleet's communication channels. His words were simple, yet they carried a weight that resonated with every human fighter in space. We're not going down without a fight. We're going to make them regret ever thinking they could take Earth. And if we go down laughing. Those words rang out across every ship in the human fleet, fueling their resolve. The laughter that had been so random at first now became a battle cry. It was as if every human fighter was refusing to let fear take hold. The Empire's fire continued to rain down, but the humans didn't back away. They laughed at the missiles, they laughed at the lasers, and they laughed at the Empire's fleet as if mocking their attempts to crush them. The laughter wasn't just a display of defiance. It was a weapon in itself. It threw the Empire's forces off balance. Tarth's fleet, trained to expect fear and desperation from their enemies, couldn't process the humans' behavior. They were supposed to be fighting an easy war, but they were facing something new, an enemy that was unpredictable, relentless, and impossible to intimidate. As the hours stretched on, the battle began to take a strange turn. The humans, despite their inferior technology, were winning in ways that defied logic. The Empire's ships were massive, their weaponry devastating, yet the humans kept surprising them. Every time the Empire would launch a new wave of attacks, the humans would find a way to slip through the cracks, to dodge, to adapt, and most importantly, to laugh in the face of their impending doom. Meanwhile, the people of Earth watched as their fleet held its ground. The laughter on the battlefield had become a symbol of hope. It was no longer just the soldiers who laughed, it was the civilians too. People gathered in front of their televisions, smartphones, and computer screens, cheering on the humans in space. They had always been told that Earth was a weak and insignificant planet, a mere speck in the grand scheme of the universe. But now, they saw their own species standing tall, defying the odds, and laughing at the mighty Empire that had once thought itself invincible. The Empire's first mistake was underestimating humanity. Their second mistake was not realizing that the human spirit, fueled by hope and humor, was far stronger than any weapon or fleet in the galaxy. The battle continued, and though the humans were still outnumbered and outgunned, they had something the Empire could never take from them: their laughter. It was the sound of defiance, the sound of humanity standing firm in the face of impossible odds, and it echoed across the stars, reaching the hearts of everyone on Earth. And the Empire, for the first time, was forced to reconsider everything it had thought it knew about this small, insignificant planet. As the battle between Earth's fleet and the Empire's formidable warships continued, the tide began to turn in ways no one could have predicted. Despite the Empire's overwhelming size and advanced technology, the humans' resilience and unpredictability were proving to be their greatest assets. What had started as a surprise encounter was quickly becoming a conflict that would be remembered for centuries to come. The humans were no longer just defending their planet. They were fighting with a purpose that transcended mere survival. The Empire's commanders had expected the human fleet to crumble under the weight of their superior firepower. But the humans were different. They were resourceful, inventive, and above all, determined to protect their home. With every passing moment, their ingenuity was becoming more apparent. While the Empire relied on massive, powerful ships to overwhelm their enemies, the humans had something else: agility, adaptability, and the courage to face the impossible with a smile on their faces. Commander William Parker, the leader of Earth's fleet, was starting to feel the weight of the battle. Though his ships were small and lacked the advanced weaponry of the Empire, they had something that made them unpredictable. Parker was no longer just fighting for Earth's survival, he was fighting for the pride of his people. And as the laughter continued to echo across the battlefield, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unity among his crew. The laughter wasn't just a reaction to the chaos. It was a symbol of their refusal to back down. On the Empire's flagship, Grand Admiral Tarth stood at the front of his command center, seething with frustration. His fleet had taken significant losses, and every attack they launched seemed to only make the humans stronger. The invaders had underestimated Earth's defenses, thinking their technology and firepower would make the conquest easy. But Earth's fleet was unlike any adversary the Empire had ever encountered. Instead of fear, the humans laughed in the face of destruction. And that, Tarth realized, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The Empire's warships, large and menacing, began to move in tighter formations, trying to bring the human ships into range of their devastating weapons. Yet for every calculated move the Empire made, the humans responded with unpredictable maneuvers, weaving through the Empire's fire like acrobats in space. The Empire's once unchallenged superiority was slipping away, and they were starting to realize just how much they had underestimated the tenacity of Earth's defenders. As the battle intensified, the human strategy became clearer. They were not focused on winning in the conventional sense. Instead, they were focused on survival, staying one step ahead of the Empire at all costs. Parker, who had never considered himself a strategist, found himself thinking outside the box, using every available resource in ways he never thought possible. His crew was inventive, using their knowledge of Earth's technology to create new weapons and systems on the fly. What the Empire saw as inferior technology was now turning into a powerful advantage for the humans. Parker's plan was simple: keep moving, keep adapting, and never let the Empire get too comfortable. The Empire was used to fighting wars with overwhelming force, but the humans had learned to fight with their minds, their hearts, and their sense of humor. They didn't fear death. They embraced the absurdity of the situation and laughed in the face of it. Back on Earth, the people continued to watch the battle unfold with bated breath. The world had come together in ways no one could have predicted. Governments that once disagreed on almost everything were now united under one cause: the defense of their planet. From the streets of Tokyo to the plains of Africa, people gathered in solidarity, watching the fight unfold on their screens. And as the laughter continued to ring out from the human fleet, the citizens of Earth couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. They were no longer just spectators. They were part of this fight, a global community united by a common goal. As the humans continued to outmaneuver the Empire's ships, a new kind of battle was unfolding. It wasn't just a war in space. It was a war of ideologies. The Empire represented the cold, calculated might of a technologically advanced civilization. They believed that power was the ultimate tool of control, that strength was the key to dominance. But the humans had shown them something different. They had shown the Empire that willpower, creativity, and the strength of the human spirit could turn the tide of any battle. Grand Admiral Tarth could feel the pressure mounting. His fleet had sustained more damage than he was willing to admit, and the humans were showing no signs of backing down. The once confident Empire now faced a new kind of challenge, one that they had never expected from a species as primitive as humanity. The longer the battle raged, the more the Empire's confidence began to erode. It wasn't just the humans' laughter that unsettled them. It was the fact that the humans weren't afraid to lose. They weren't afraid to die, and that made them a force to be reckoned with. Parker's strategy was starting to work. His fleet had managed to damage several key ships in the Empire's fleet, disrupting their formations and creating chaos. The Empire's once immense superiority was no longer as clear-cut as it had been in the beginning, and with every moment that passed, the humans became bolder, their laughter growing louder and more defiant. As the Empire's forces began to falter, Parker saw an opportunity. It was a small one, but it was enough to change the course of the battle. He ordered his fleet to push forward, taking the fight directly to the Empire's flagship. They would hit them where it hurt the most, at the heart of their command. And as they pushed forward, the humans' laughter rang out, louder than ever. The Empire's dominance was no longer a certainty. The humans had turned the tide, and the invaders found themselves struggling to hold on. The laughter that had started as a symbol of defiance had now become a sound that the Empire would never forget. It was the sound of humanity standing strong, refusing to bend, refusing to break. And it was the sound that would echo across the stars, signaling the beginning of the end for the Galactic Empire's invasion of Earth. The battle raged on, the tension between Earth's ships and the Galactic Empire's war machines palpable in the cold, unforgiving vastness of space. What had begun as an overwhelming conquest by the Empire had slowly evolved into something entirely unexpected. The humans, despite their seemingly outdated technology and smaller fleets, had turned the tide in ways the Empire's commanders had never imagined. They weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting with the sheer determination that had defined humanity for millennia. The Empire, once certain of its victory, now found itself in a difficult position. The sheer unpredictability of the humans was proving to be their greatest weapon. While the Empire relied on overwhelming firepower and advanced war tactics, the humans used their ingenuity, resourcefulness, and most surprisingly, their sense of humor to disrupt and confuse the Empire's forces. Their laughter, loud and defiant, echoed across the battlefield, mocking the Empire's overwhelming might. It was as if the very sound of their laughter chipped away at the Empire's confidence, making the seemingly indomitable fleet appear less invincible. Grand Admiral Tarth stood in his command center, his hands clenched tightly behind his back. His piercing gaze scanned the holographic projections of the battle unfolding around him. The humans' fleet had already inflicted substantial damage to several of his ships, and they seemed to be adapting faster than he could react. His commanders were reporting multiple systems failures, and the once perfect coordination of the Empire's warships had begun to falter. It wasn't just that the humans were winning. They were making a mockery of the Empire's superiority. Tarth's frustration grew as the laughter of the humans continued to filter through his communication channels. It was as if the very sound of it was a weapon, mocking him and his fleet. But Tarth was not one to admit defeat. He knew that his fleet still held the advantage in terms of firepower and numbers. The humans were growing bolder, yes, but that was precisely what would lead to their downfall. If the humans continued to press their advantage, they would soon overextend themselves. The Empire would regroup and crush them, he thought. It was only a matter of time. Meanwhile, Commander William Parker, leading Earth's forces, was feeling a strange sense of camaraderie with his crew. He knew they were up against an enemy far more powerful than any force they had faced before. But as the battle continued, he saw something different in his crew's eyes. Determination, resolve, and even, in some cases, a sense of excitement. The humans weren't simply fighting to defend their planet. They were fighting for the future, for their families, for the freedom of every living person on Earth. And above all, they were fighting together. The crew of Earth's flagship, the Vanguard, was fully immersed in the chaos of battle, but there was something almost celebratory in the air. Even as enemy fire rained down on their shields, the humans responded with laughter, jokes, and even quick-witted banter over the comms. It was as if the human spirit was unbreakable. Each time the Empire launched an attack, the humans responded with even more creative ways to dodge, counterattack, and stay one step ahead. Parker's tactics were unconventional but effective. Instead of following standard military doctrine, he encouraged his fleet to think outside the box. They created new technologies on the fly, using Earth's resources and anything they could find to build makeshift weapons and shields. The humans' adaptability had become their greatest strength. They no longer needed to fight with sheer firepower. They could win with their minds. Earth's ships, though smaller and less technologically advanced than the Empire's, had become agile, unpredictable. Their unpredictability made it impossible for the Empire to create any sense of order in the chaos. The humans, as it turned out, were masters of improvisation. Their battle tactics were fluid, constantly shifting as they learned more about the Empire's strategies. If one tactic failed, they would quickly abandon it and try something else. Their ability to adapt was their secret weapon. In one particular skirmish, Earth's fleet had managed to disable the Empire's heavy artillery on one of their largest warships, a vessel that was supposed to be invincible. The humans, in a move that shocked the Empire, had used a makeshift electromagnetic pulse weapon, crafted from salvaged parts of Earth's space stations, to disable the Empire's primary weapon systems. It was a simple device, but it worked, rendering the Empire's most powerful warship effectively useless. The humans had taken a huge risk, but the gamble had paid off. But the battle wasn't over yet. The Empire wasn't one to surrender easily, and Tarth had a backup plan. The Empire's fleet began to regroup, reorganizing their forces with cold efficiency. They launched a counterattack, bringing in reinforcements from a nearby sector, hoping to turn the tide of the battle in their favor once again. The Empire's flagship, the Invictus, charged forward, its weapons primed and ready, preparing to launch a devastating strike on Earth's flagship. Parker, however, was ready. He had expected this move, and his fleet was prepared. He ordered his ships to spread out, using their small size and speed to evade the Empire's attacks. The humans had learned from the Empire's tactics, and they knew that the larger the ship, the easier it was to target. The human strategy now relied on hit-and-run tactics, using the Empire's own size against them. The smaller ships darted in and out of the Empire's firing range, landing blows with pinpoint accuracy before quickly retreating. As the battle raged on, Parker couldn't help but feel a surge of pride for his fleet. It wasn't just their technology or tactics that were winning this battle, it was their spirit. The humans, though outmatched in terms of resources, had something the Empire could never replicate: the will to fight for what was theirs. They fought with everything they had, and more. The laughter that had started as a mocking reaction to the Empire's arrogance had now become a symbol of defiance. The Empire had no idea what they had unleashed when they underestimated humanity's will to survive. The laughter of Earth's fleet continued to ring out across the stars, a sound of rebellion, of resistance. And as the Empire's forces continued to falter, it became clear that this battle was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The Galactic Empire may have underestimated Earth, but they were about to learn the most important lesson of all. Humanity was not to be taken lightly. And as the humans laughed in the face of overwhelming odds, they proved it time and time again. The battle had now stretched across days, but the tide was finally turning in Earth's favor. The Galactic Empire's vast armada, once so confident in its ability to crush the small, seemingly insignificant human fleet, was now struggling to maintain any semblance of control. Their massive warships, the pride of the Empire, were starting to show signs of wear. In every skirmish, the humans proved themselves more adaptable, more inventive, and most importantly, more persistent than the Empire could have ever predicted. The Empire had underestimated humanity's greatest asset, its ability to endure. Where the Empire relied on brute force, the humans used their wits. Where the Empire saw numbers, humans saw unity. They had become an unrelenting force, powered not by the technology in their ships, but by the will to protect their home. And with each passing moment, the Empire's once certain victory slipped further away. Inside the command center of Earth's flagship, the Vanguard, Commander William Parker paced back and forth. His eyes were fixed on the holographic displays that projected the chaotic battle unfolding above their heads. The Empire's flagship, the Invictus, had become their primary target. It was a symbol of the Empire's arrogance, and Parker knew that if they could bring it down, the Empire would lose the fight. Despite the odds, Parker had faith in his crew. They were exhausted, having fought nonstop for days, but they were not ready to give up. They were humans, after all, resilient, stubborn, and always finding ways to push past their limits. Every time they took a hit, every time the Empire's fleet thought they had them cornered, the humans found a way to rise again, to fight back even harder. "Commander, we're getting a transmission from the fleet." Lieutenant O'Connor's voice cut through the tension in the air. Parker immediately turned his attention to the comm screen, where an image of his fleet's tactical officer appeared. "Sir, the Invictus is powering up its main weapon," the officer reported. "It looks like they're going to fire. If they hit us directly, we'll be done." Parker's mind raced. The weapon of the Empire's flagship was capable of obliterating entire fleets with a single strike. The chances of surviving it were slim, but Parker had never been one to back down from a fight. The humans had already proven time and again that they could turn the odds in their favor. But this was different. The enemy was preparing to unleash their ultimate weapon. "Deploy the disruptors," Parker ordered, his voice calm but firm. He looked around the bridge, his crew steady in their resolve. "We don't give them the chance to use that weapon." The disruptors were a last-ditch effort, an experimental technology that Parker's engineers had managed to develop in a matter of days using whatever materials they had on hand. It wasn't perfect, but it might be enough to disrupt the Empire's targeting systems and prevent the weapon from firing. "All systems online," reported Chief Engineer Holt. "We're ready to go." The tension on the bridge was palpable. The crew had done everything they could to prepare, but the uncertainty of the situation still loomed over them like a dark cloud. As the seconds ticked down, Parker watched the Invictus, massive, imposing, and ever-threatening, hovering in the distance. The Empire was getting ready to launch everything they had in one final push. The entire fleet, once scattered and chaotic, now seemed to be moving as one. The humans were no longer acting like a disorganized group of underdogs. They were a singular force, unified by a common goal. Each ship had its role, and every crew member had their part to play. It was as if the entire fleet had tapped into something deeper than just military tactics. They were fighting for their very survival, for the future of their species. "Now, Lieutenant," Parker ordered, his voice steady. "On my command, fire the disruptors." The seconds felt like hours. The Invictus was closing the distance, preparing to unleash its deadly blast. The hum of the disruptor systems echoed through the ship, and Parker's heart raced. This was the moment. 3, 2, 1. "Disruptors now," Parker shouted. A brilliant wave of energy erupted from Earth's fleet, a ripple that stretched across space, racing toward the Invictus. The Empire's flagship attempted to fire its weapon, but just as it did, the disruptor pulse collided with its systems, causing them to flicker. The targeting systems went offline. The weapon aimed at Earth's fleet sputtered, powerless. A single shot fired erratically, missing by miles. For the first time since the battle had begun, the humans heard the unmistakable sound of Empire ships retreating. The invincible fleet was no longer invincible. Parker let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The disruptors had worked. The Empire's flagship was now vulnerable. The tide of the battle had truly shifted. The humans had done it. They had taken on the Galactic Empire and won, using nothing more than sheer human determination and resourcefulness. But even as they celebrated this victory, Parker knew it wasn't over. The Empire would not go quietly into the night. Their retreat was only temporary. Soon, they would regroup and return, but the humans would be ready. Across the stars, humanity's laughter echoed once more, this time with a different meaning. It was no longer a mocking sound but a cry of triumph. The Galactic Empire, once so sure of its superiority, had underestimated the humans. And now they had learned the hardest lesson of all. Never underestimate a species that refuses to give up. The humans had turned the tables. Earth's dreadnoughts had arrived, and the Galactic Empire's reign of terror was no longer as certain as it once seemed. The fight was far from over, but one thing was certain. Humanity had proven that it would never be easily defeated, and as long as they fought, the Empire could never win.